Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Happy Monday, preschool peeps. Say it again, Alison. You cut out.
I did. I'm sorry. Hi, peeps.
There you go. There it is. Today, we wanted to address a topic that seems to be a really hot topic for families as schools have released their plans for reopening. I know that a lot of people are making decisions having to do with how their children are going to be learning. Are they going to send them back to the school setting? Or are they going to do completely remote? In some places that's being permitted. Are they going to choose instead to be homeschoolers for a while instead of doing the remote learning from the public school or private school system? There are a lot of choices that people are making right now. I realize that in some places there are no choices. I realize that you may be living in a place where the state or the government where you are said, we're just going to be remote, or we're just going to be doing this. Where Alison and I are, and in many other places, parents have some choices to make.
Yeah.
And we decided the choice to focus on was not, do I send my child back to the building or keep my child home full time? The choice we're going to focus on today is, do I do the remote or distance learning that's being offered through my child's school, or do I become a homeschooler? So I'd like to sort of just give the caveat that this episode is really aimed for people making that decision, not people who already are homeschooling, who know how that works, who understand the ins and outs of it. And if that works for you, wonderful. We're not trying to say that people who homeschool have made a wrong decision. What we're trying to do is provide people who listen to this podcast with some of the information that Alison and I have researched having to do with making the choice to homeschool versus using the distance learning that your child's school may be offering.
Right. It's like for the new to homeschooling folks.
Or the considering homeschooling.
Or the considering, like we're not sure. Yes. So good caveat. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want anyone to think that we're putting anything down. And honestly, if you decide after listening to us, no, I'm still going to homeschool, good.
Awesome.
Go do it. It's not,
awesome.
We're not talking about what decision you make. We're talking about some of the research that Alison and I did in regard to some of the services that may or may not be offered to you as a homeschooler. And I feel like people should know that. I think when people react emotionally to a situation like we all are during this COVID-19 crisis.
For sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if we always are able in that emotional state to think through every angle. So I'm hoping that some of the research that Alison and I did over the past number of days to figure out what are the ins and outs of this will be helpful to you in making that decision before you commit. Because in some places, committing is committing. There are schools where districts and other governing bodies are saying, listen, once our remote option or our in-person option fill up, that's it.
That's it. Yeah.
No changing for the marking period or no changing for the year. So this is something that I think people need to consider.
Yeah, it's once you make it, it's a commitment in some districts, some states. So it's a lot. You got to really consider all the facets of it.
Where Alison and I live, and this is true in other places too, when you are a homeschooler and you have disconnected from the public or private school system, you've now made that disconnect. If you were to decide to send your child, if you decide one day, we're going to send my child to this school or this school system now, we're not going to homeschool anymore, the children have to take a grade placement test. Which means that depending on how your child does with grade placement tests, your child may be put in classes that are with either children who are much younger than them or children who are much older than them.
Yeah.
Right? So either way can be a socialization issue. And I think you need to be aware of that when you're even thinking, I'm going to homeschool. Now, what am I using to homeschool? Does it match my school, this curriculum of the schools around me? I think that's a very important thing.
Right. And that's something you can find online. Your state curriculum you can find online. So if you want to homeschool, you can always use that and line up what you're doing at home with what the district is doing. But if you're trying to just do homeschooling for a year because of COVID, or 2 years because of COVID, and then you decide, like, we know this isn't a full-time, like, until he graduates high school kind of thing, they might go back into a different grade level than what you are at home, or what they would have been in had they just continued public schooling.
Well, I think that leads to the statement that homeschooling is a commitment. People who homeschool their children make a giant commitment to the how they will lead their lives, that they will commit to this homeschooling, that they will be available to do that they will enroll their children in different socialization groups so that they don't miss out on that socialization. Many homeschoolers commit to the sort of hands-on learning where they travel to experience different things, and that's very hard right now. You're not going to get that component during COVID-19. So there's this whole aspect of homeschooling where they would take their children for the experiences of travel, of museums, of these in-person hands-on explorations with knowledge. They would go to history museums and natural science museums and all these things to learn. You can't necessarily do that now.
You can't do that now. Yeah.
There's this whole chunk of what homeschoolers have put together to educate their children that's not going to happen for you.
Right.
During COVID-19.
Right.
And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, especially depending on the requirements of homeschooling where you are. So where Alison and I happen to be, the requirements for homeschooling really are minimal. You don't have to prove anything about your curriculum. But in other places, I was reading, Alison, that they do. They have to work hand in hand, with the public system to prove what they're teaching the children. I know where we are, you don't have to do that, but also you don't get a diploma from our public school systems. You're going to have to take the GRE. No, not the GRE. That's for graduate school. The GED.
The GED.
I got my G's mixed up. Sorry. You're going to have to take the GED to get a high school equivalency, maybe the high school equivalency exam, the GED. There's a whole thing to get the diploma.
Yeah.
So I think people need to take into consideration, not just now, if you have young children, this isn't about just now. This is about years going forward. Right. What am I committing to? What could happen if I decide, okay, the COVID-19 crisis is over. Now I'm going to enroll you in a school. Now you may have to take exams to decide what grade you're in. This is, to disconnect from the public school folks is not a small decision.
No.
Or private school, because they kind of run the same in this way.
Thing. Yeah.
In some states, homeschooling, my understanding is that they're considered private schools.
Private schools in some states, yes. It's like a separate, I don't know how that works. I guess you would have to register yourself as a homeschooler, therefore you are registered as a private school. I don't know, our state doesn't work like that. I think you just have to let the district know, hey, I'm homeschooling my child, and they're like, okay, see ya.
I think one of the problems with that is that it sounds so deceptively easy, but here's the thing, homeschooling, again, huge commitment, not so easy. Not so easy.
Yeah.
And there are services that are provided by our federal government, and generally speaking, public and private school systems that you would be forfeiting, that you would likely be forfeiting. So one of the ones that you may or may not be forfeiting are special need education services. Please check where you are in the district in which you live for how they handle, if you have a child with special needs who receives services, how does your district handle the services? Because here's Alison and I learned, here's how it goes.
Yeah.
The federal government, the mandate for special education, the federal government basically says about homeschoolers, that's up to you, states. That's up to you locally if you're going to provide those services to those children. And then the states look at the districts and go, that's up to you.
Yeah.
You all decide what you're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even when they do provide services, in some cases, the services that you would receive, if the district says, sure, we'll provide your child with services, it's not going to be the same as when you are connected to the school system. It's just not. They don't have the time or the personnel to do that, nor do they have to do that legally. They don't have to provide you with the same level of services, the same time frame, none of that.
Right. Right. And in my experience, most don't. They're just like, if you're not enrolled here, we're not going to. You know, like I've sat in a few IEP meetings that are like that, where they're like, oh, we'll provide you with the IEP, but the services, you're going to have to go private now, you know, right. But like, so.
Because they're obligated to do the evaluation. They're obligated to do the evaluation.
And they're obligated to do the IEP. And then once that happens, the parent can decide, okay, here's the IEP. I could sign off on this, and now they're in the public school system, and they'll get all the services through the school. Or I could not sign it, you know, and I could just take it, but I'm not going to sign off on services. But you're on your own, you know. Right. But you have this IEP that you could show to private speech therapists and private, like, whatever you need. But you're no longer getting it through the school, and it's on you. It's on you to go get it. It's on you to pay for that, or possibly your health insurance might go through it. But like,
right.
You're on your own. And that's hard. That's hard to manage, you know?
Yeah. You know, one of the great gifts of our time is that we know so much about special needs and have a lot of therapies for children who need special education. So just remember that you could potentially be totally disconnecting, other than getting the evaluation and the educational plan for your child, disconnecting from the services that they offer. Please, again, check with your district, contact them, call them up and say, I'm considering homeschooling. Would my special needs child still get special education services or not? Please find that out. Another thing that for people to consider is if you qualify for, you're right over, if you qualify for free or reduced lunch, that's something that you also need to consider, because according to our research, free and reduced lunch are provided to children who are enrolled in a public or private school system.
Right. Right. So if you are still connected to your school system, like if you choose, instead of to go full homeschooling, you choose the remote learning option, you are still connected to your district. You'll still be home with your child, and you'll still receive your meals. They'll deliver them to you. They were doing that in the spring when we had to close on March 13th. They were delivering them to your house. However the district decided to do that, they did it. If you decide to homeschool, that's not an option anymore. You're not connected anymore. So you won't receive your meals that you're eligible for.
You know, in the spring, people were talking about how wonderful it is that the schools were providing the meals, even though they were remote. Well, folks, they were required by law to do that.
Law.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful that they figured it out. I give them a lot of credit for figuring out to use the school buses to deliver the food, but they had to figure it out.
They had to figure it out.
They are obligated to provide that food to you.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to know. And again, if you decide to waive these rights, so, you know, go for it.
That's fine,
But you have to know what you're waiving. You know, there was a statement from a website going back to special needs for a second about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, better known as IDEA in educational circles. So IDEA requires, and this is a quote, it requires public schools to provide every disabled student a free, appropriate public education, also known as FAPE, free, appropriate public education. This means that children with disabilities have the right to receive educational services appropriate to their needs at public expense. However, parents who choose to homeschool are waiving this right for their children, but may still be eligible for services through their local public schools, and that's totally up to them. Yep. So you've waived a couple of rights now. You've waived the right to special education services, and now you're at the mercy of whatever they're willing to give you, if anything. Right.
If anything.
You've waived the right to free and reduced lunch if that's something that you qualify for. Right. Your children may need to take placement exams should you decide to return. And in fact, like Alison, I was reading in some places where they're like, we need to know what you're going to do. Are you committing to coming to the building when we're there, or the hybrid that many people are doing?
Yeah.
Are you committing to keeping your children home for the remote learning that's allowed? Where are you committing when there's a choice? And there are all these caveats around committing. Like, once you commit, you can't change your mind for a marking period for half a year or this school year. You've got to commit. And I think people are talking a lot about that commitment to either a hybrid or totally being at home, but they're not talking about this commitment to homeschooling enough.
Yes, I agree with that. And I feel like that's a big commitment. Like if you're like, okay, let's just try it. We'll see if it works. And if it doesn't, we'll just enroll again. That's not an option in every state. That's not an option in every district. Some districts are like, once you make your choice, like we can't enroll you in the middle of the year, which is like that you're doing this for the whole year, whether it works or not. So you got to figure it out, it's just a lot to think about. It's a lot.
And please ask questions. Don't assume anything. Assume nothing.
Yeah.
Please go and ask questions of your local school district so that you fully understand the commitment that you're making. And I also understand this. Think about this, Allison. If you currently are not working, are working remotely, or are not working because you've lost your job or you're still on furlough, it can feel much more tempting to commit to homeschooling than when you have a job to go to.
Yes.
But the goal, I would imagine, is to get a job to go to.
To work. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So if you're in one of those districts that makes you commit for the entire year, and in November a really awesome job pops up and you're like, whoa, I'm going to take it. Now, are you stuck? You have to have a backup plan then. Or you have to say, hey, for a whole year, I'm not going to look for work. I'm going to dedicate this to my homeschooling, but not a lot of people can do that. That's a big financial strain. So, it's just a lot to weigh.
Right. It is a lot to weigh. And for those of you who are thinking, well, I'm just going to choose the remote learning offered through the school district, you have questions to ask families, ask the system
your district.
Ask your district how their curriculum will function, whether you're doing hybrid or remote. What curriculum are you using? How will it function? Or how have the teachers been prepared to do this? How much time are you spending preparing the teachers? You have to ask questions about technology. You have to ask how much will be synchronous, which means at the same time as the teacher is teaching, or asynchronous, which means it's not the same. You're going to send me videos and work to do with my kid. How much of it is the teacher actually teaching versus the teacher sending you stuff to do? These are all questions that you need to ask about the hybrid and fully remote systems.
Yeah. It's a lot to take in. To me, no question is small at this point. If it's a question in your mind, ask it to your superintendent, your principal, to anybody that will listen. Ask it. You need those answers to make this decision. You need to know.
And there seems to be no uniform way to do anything.
No, there isn't. And I feel
not public school, not childcare, changes.
No, and even within the public school system, each district is different. It depends on what that district can afford to do. Can your district afford to be buying these cameras to put into their classrooms to do that live stream? Not all districts can, so it's don't go Googling for the answer and think that that's the answer because some district in the south of your state does it that way. No, because your district might not, so you really need to ask specifically to your area, to your public school, to your administration that's in your town, because even from town to town, the neighboring town might be doing something entirely different than what yours is, based on so many factors that they have to deal with on their end, so ask the specific questions to the specific people you need to ask it to.
And those are your local people. Your local people.
Yeah.
It doesn't even pay to go to up another level to like state or whatever. Local.
Don't the local. State. Yeah, the state. No, it's all, at least in this state, and I'm sure it's most states are like that. It's up to the district. And each district has got its own budget and what they're willing to spend money on and what they can spend money on and what they want their teachers to do and different contracts going on. Totally different. Don't even go to the state. Go to your local district and ask the
And
question.
and here's the bottom line. There's no good solution to any of this at all.
This
is unbelievably disruptive to education.
Yeah.
And I know we've said this before in episodes of the podcast, but I just have to repeat it because I've been hearing it a lot lately.
Yeah.
When they're talking about, well, people are saying if the schools go totally remote, the children will be behind. And I'm just going to repeat this. There's no such thing as behind
There's no such
anymore.
thing as behind. Yeah.
There's no such thing anymore. All the children are, you got to figure a solid chunk of their educational life has been disrupted, and it's universal.
Yeah.
It's not only your town, it's your state, it's your country, it's the world.
The world.
So there is no such thing. Stop that notion. There's no such thing as behind. But once you go to make one of these commitments, you really have to know what you're getting into. And again, if you decide, no, I'm not going to do the homeschool thing, I'm going to stay connected to the public school system, or your private school, you have a lot of questions to ask.
Yes.
Go and ask about that curriculum and stuff. When you watch their presentations about how they're going to handle things, you should be watching with pen and paper right next to you for your questions. You have every right, families, to ask every single question you have. This is a school system that you pay for, either through your tax dollars if it's public, or through your tuition if it's private. You are paying their salaries. Yeah. So please go and ask your questions.
Yeah.
And whatever you decide, Alison and I both hope it works out for you.
Yeah. Whatever you decide is the right decision for you.
Yeah. Make the decision you need to make. We're all right now making COVID-19 decisions that work for us very independently.
Yes.
And you will do the same for your children, I know. So I think, are we ready to wrap up? I think we're ready. I think that was a lot.
I think that was a lot. That was heavy.
Yeah. Yes.
It's heavy times, people. It's heavy times.
Ooh, so heavy.
Not going through everybody's head. The anxiety's got to be like crazy high for everybody. Parents, administration, teachers, staff, school, bus drivers, childcare centers.
Shout out to the bus drivers. They cannot be happy.
No, it's because everybody's got this like whenever there's a debate about it, it's like, oh, the teachers. I'm like, yeah, but what about the bus drivers, the paraprofessionals, the lunchroom, the aides? Like, there's
a lot of places are not doing lunch. A lot of people, a lot of places, they're dismissing half day so that they don't have to deal with the lunch issue.
Yeah. But then those poor lunch workers lost their jobs.
Yes.
I mean, it's just a lot. It's stress all around. It's a lot.
All right. So all that being said, you're going to take us out, Alison?
Yes. Let's make it a little more cheerful because that was a lot. You want to rate us 5 stars because we're awesome, right?
Right.
Flashing it. Okay. And if you want to write us for any reason whatsoever, you have a comment about today's issues that we talked about, you have a question for our Ask Us Anything, or just a question about anything, write us on our website at howpreschoolteachersdoit.com, or you can find us on Facebook, How Preschool Teachers Do It Podcast. Am I doing this like really well or what?
Oh my gosh. I mean, all of you right now with the whole sing-songy thing and everything. Look at you.
It's my new job.
I love it.
It's a job I didn't want. And now I feel like I'm
so
really good at it. Yeah.
Yes, you're great at it.
You always do the intro so well, which I don't.
We all have our place. Yeah. Everybody has their stuff.
We all work as a team. That's the whole point, people. Work as a team always.
Okay, preschool peeps. We will catch you next time on the podcast.
Bye.
Take care.